My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 32 years old, and the moment my family finally decided I was worth acknowledging wasn't when I graduated with honors or when I worked 3 jobs to support myself, or even when I survived things they never bothered asking about. No, it happened the day they discovered that the daughter they ignored, mocked, and pushed aside now owned a $5 million penthouse overlooking downtown Manhattan. I'll never forget their faces, wide-eyed, speechless, stunned, as if they were seeing me for the first time in my entire life. And it all started at a dinner I wasn't supposed to attend, a dinner I had been deliberately left out of. My sister, Danielle, had organized a family gathering, which really meant everyone but me. I only found out because my cousin accidentally forwarded the wrong group chat. They were all there, my parents, my brother, Danielle, her fiance, even distant relatives. Everyone except me. The girl who had put herself through college, the girl who graduated summa cum laude, the girl they had all conveniently forgotten the moment I stepped off that graduation stage alone. But when I showed up unexpectedly at that dinner, everything changed. I walked in wearing a simple black dress and carrying my coat over my arm. The room went silent. Forks froze midair, chairs creaked. My mom's eyes bulged. My dad's jaw tightened. But it was Danielle's voice that sliced through the air first. Lauren, what are you doing here?" She said it the way someone would react to seeing a stray dog wander into a five-star restaurant. And before I could answer, my mother whispered loudly enough for the whole table to hear. "Who told her?" That's when it hit me harder than anything else. This wasn't an accidental oversight. This wasn't forgetfulness. I'd been intentionally cut out. Again. And I felt that sting, that old familiar burn in my chest, the same one I felt back in college when my family didn't show up to my graduation. But this time, something inside me didn't shrink. Something inside me rose. "Relax," I told them calmly. "I'm not here to join the dinner. I just needed to drop something off." My father's voice came out clipped, annoyed. "What could you possibly need to drop off here?" I reached into my bag, pulled out a sleek white envelope, and placed it on the table. Danielle reached for it first. Of course she did. She had always grabbed everything first. Money, attention, space, affection, everything. But when she opened the envelope, her face went pale, then red, then confused. Inside was a contract, the deed to my penthouse, recently purchased in cash. The second page was the part that shattered the room, a written request asking my family to remove my contact information from all future group decisions, emergency contacts, financial expectations, wedding contributions, family events, and planning responsibilities. In short, you don't want me included? Fine, I'm done trying. I release you. But here's the twist. They weren't shocked because I wanted distance. They were shocked because they had just realized I was no longer the broke, quiet, unimportant sister in the family. I wasn't the background character anymore. My father snatched the paper. "You bought what?" My mother blinked rapidly. "You can't afford this. Lauren, be serious." Danielle scoffed. "Is this like a rental or one of those co-living things?" "It's mine," I said plainly. "I closed last week." The table erupted with whispers. My father waved the paper. "How? How on earth could you possibly afford a penthouse?" And that's when I looked at each of them, really looked at them, and understood for the first time in my adult life, they didn't know me. Not at all. They had never asked, never cared, never even looked close enough to wonder. This was the moment everything shifted, and the moment everything inside me finally snapped. But before I tell you exactly what led to this, before I take you into the years of neglect, betrayal, humiliation, and the truth behind how I got that penthouse, please make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because you're going to need to hear every single detail of what happened next. Now, let me take you back because that dinner table confrontation wasn't the beginning. No. It was the explosion built from years of emotional landmines my family planted long before I ever became successful. I grew up in a small suburban neighborhood outside Boston. Nice area, good schools, quiet streets. Perfect from the outside. But inside our house, everything revolved around Danielle, the golden child, the princess, the star. She was beautiful, charismatic, loud, dramatic, and my parents adored her for it. Everywhere she went, they followed. Everywhere she failed, they rescued. Everywhere she succeeded, they celebrated like it was a national holiday. And me? I was the easy child, the independent one, the one they didn't worry about, the one they forgot to pick up after school more times than I can count. Even at 6 years old, I remember sitting on the curb with my backpack beside me, watching other parents hug their kids, while mine sped by to get Danielle to a dance rehearsal. My mother would shout, "Lauren, sweetie, walk home, it's good exercise." I was 6. But it only got worse as we grew older. In birthdays, pictures, holidays, Danielle was always in the center, always the priority, always the reason plans were changed, money was spent, rules were bent. And the more she shined, the more invisible I became. My father used to say, "Lauren doesn't need attention, she's responsible." But responsible is just a nice word adults use when they want to ignore you without feeling guilty. I learned early how to be alone, how to entertain myself, how to study quietly while Danielle threw tantrums upstairs. I learned how to cook because no one noticed if I was hungry. I learned how to handle disappointment because no one ever apologized. And somewhere between childhood and adulthood, I also learned how to disappear so well that even on the most important day of my life, my college graduation, they forgot to show up. I remember that morning vividly. I had worked so hard for that degree. Late nights, part-time jobs, tears, exhaustion. But I walked onto campus glowing. I kept checking my phone, expecting a text. "We're on the way. So proud of you. Where should we sit?" Nothing. I called. No answer. My brother finally picked up and said, "Oh, Mom thought your ceremony was tomorrow, and no one can make it today. Danielle has a hair appointment for her engagement photos." I walked across that stage, smiling for the camera, while my heart cracked open inside my chest. I remember looking out at the crowd, rows upon rows of cheering families, and realizing I had no one there. Not a single person. Afterward, I sat alone on a bench under a tree, still wearing my cap and gown. Couples took pictures, parents brought flowers, siblings hugged. I remember thinking, maybe if I were brighter, louder, more interesting, maybe then they'd see me. That graduation day shaped me. It taught me that no matter how hard I worked, it would never be enough for them. So I stopped waiting for them to notice. I buried myself in ambition instead. I moved to New York with nothing but 2 suitcases and a folder of resumes. I worked an entry-level job by day, freelanced at night, and slept 4 hours most days. I studied everything: business strategy, digital marketing, real estate investing, personal finance. I learned how to take risks, smart ones, strategic ones. And slowly, painfully, I built something. It wasn't overnight. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But while my family thought I was struggling in the city, I was growing, thriving, transforming. And the beautiful part? They never asked. Not once. Not a text, not a call, not a "Hey, Lauren, how are you holding up?" Nothing. But one person did ask. My boss, Maya. She became the closest thing I've ever had to a mentor. She challenged me, believed in me, guided me through investments and promotions. She watched me climb from assistant to strategist to partner in 8 years. And when she retired, she gifted me something that changed my entire life: access to her network. Doors opened, opportunities flowed, and eventually, so did the money. Enough money to make a purchase my family could never even imagine me making. A penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a skyline view that didn't just symbolize luxury, it symbolized freedom. But here's the strange part. Sitting alone in that penthouse the first night, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel proud. I felt empty. Like the little girl on the school curb again, waiting for people who were never coming. That emptiness is what pushed me to write that letter, that boundary, that declaration of independence. And dropping it at that dinner table was supposed to be the end of everything. But instead, it became the beginning of something much darker. Because after the shock faded, after the whisper settled, my father leaned forward, stared at me with calculating eyes, and said something that made my stomach turn. Something that made me realize they hadn't ignored me out of indifference, but from something far more intentional. "Lauren," he said slowly, "I think it's time we talk about the real reason you were left out tonight." And what he revealed next changed everything I thought I knew about my family. My father's voice cut through the restaurant noise like a cold blade, each syllable sharpened with something I'd never heard from him before. Fear, real fear, and that alone unsettled me more than anything. My father was a controlled man, the kind who prided himself on staying calm even in chaos, the kind who thought showing emotion was a weakness. So when he leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes fixed on me as if studying a threat, I felt the first true tremor in my chest. "The real reason you weren't invited tonight," he repeated, tapping the envelope containing the deed to my penthouse, "is because your sister was trying to protect you." I blinked. Protect me? Danielle? The same woman who once told me I should stop wearing yellow because it washed out my personality? The same sister who used to jokingly tell people I was adopted because I was too boring to be related to her. Protecting me was the very last thing she was capable of. I scoffed before I could stop myself. Protect me from what? Dinner rolls, family bonding, another round of everyone pretending I don't exist? Danielle tightened her jaw. "Lauren, can you just listen for once?" "For once?" I repeated. "That's rich coming from you." My mom shifted uncomfortably, her pearl necklace clinking as she adjusted it. She always did that when she was nervous. She would touch her jewelry like it was some kind of emotional anchor. "Your sister didn't want to tell you because—" My father hesitated, glancing toward Danielle as if waiting for confirmation. "Because someone reached out to us about you. Someone concerned." I felt the temperature around me drop. "Concerned?" He nodded slowly. "We received a message from someone who knows you in New York." Danielle crossed her arms, her tone defensive but shaky. "We didn't know if it was true or not, so we agreed not to invite you tonight until we figured out what was going on." "What are you talking about?" I asked, the dread in my throat tightening like a fist. "What message?" My mother exhaled sharply and looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "It was about your lifestyle," she whispered. "What lifestyle?" My father reached into his blazer, pulled out his phone, swiped, and turned the screen toward me. It was a screenshot of an email. A long one. The subject line alone made my stomach twist. Urgent. Concern about Lauren Mitchell. Please read. The sender? Anonymous. My heart thudded painfully. I took his phone in my shaking hand and began reading, and with each sentence, my blood ran colder. The email claimed I was involved in criminal activity, that my sudden success was tied to illegal ventures, that I was connected to dangerous people, that my lifestyle in New York was unstable, unsafe, reckless. that I had cut ties with my family because I was hiding something big. And worst of all, it warned my family to keep their distance for their own safety. Every word was a lie, a calculated, detailed lie. Someone had taken the time to build a story that painted me as a criminal, a manipulator, a fraud. Someone wanted my family to think I was poison. Someone wanted them to fear me. When I finally looked up, the room was spinning slightly. "You believed this?" I whispered. "All of you?" Danielle looked at me with a mix of guilt and stubbornness. "What were we supposed to think, Lauren? You left home, went silent for weeks at a time, barely came to holidays, and then suddenly you're living in a penthouse? It didn't make sense." I stared at her, stunned. "I barely came to holidays because you never invited me, and you know that." She opened her mouth, then closed it. My dad leaned back, running a hand over his face. "We didn't know what to believe. We've always known you were secretive." "Secretive?" I repeated. "Or independent. There's a difference." "You never let us in," my mom said softly. "You always acted like you didn't need us." I felt the knot in my chest snap. "Because every time I tried to let you in, you shut me out. You made it clear I wasn't the child worth investing in." My voice rose enough that nearby tables turned to look. I lowered it, shaking. "And instead of asking me, instead of calling me, instead of giving me the benefit of the doubt for the first time in 32 years, you believed a stranger?" The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother's eyes glistened, but she blinked the cares away. She was far too proud to let them fall in public. Danielle, however, looked furious, not at me, but at the situation. "We thought this dinner would be the right time to talk about it privately," she said defensively. "We weren't excluding you to hurt you. You've been excluding me my entire life." I set the phone down slowly. This is nothing new. But something didn't add up. The email was specific, too specific. Whoever wrote it knew where I lived, knew about my work, knew personal details I'd only shared with a handful of people. And the line about my sudden success wasn't written like an assumption. It was written like someone watching me closely, someone studying me, someone who hated me. My father cleared his throat. "We were going to send it to the police if it turned out to be credible." "Credible?" I let out a humorless laugh. "You think I'm capable of this? Truly?" "We don't know who you've become, Lauren," he said. I swallowed hard. That hurt more than anything so far. Because he was right. They didn't know who I had become. But that wasn't my fault. That was theirs. I shifted my gaze around the table, feeling something inside me closing like a bore. "All right," I said quietly. "If you truly don't know who I've become, then let me remind you." I pulled out my wallet, slid a sleek black business card across the table. My father picked it up. His eyes widened, then widened further. "Partner?" he whispered. "You're a partner?" My mother grabbed the card from him. Danielle leaned forward, stunned, reading the embossed gold lettering. I nodded once. "Yes, and have been for almost a year." My dad's face flushed with surprise and something else, something darker. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked. "Because you never asked," I replied. That seemed to hit him, really hit him. But before anyone could say another word, the waiter approached with dessert menus. Danielle waved him away irritably, and he left. My father set the card down with a sigh. "Whoever sent that message wanted to destroy your relationship with us, wanted to isolate you, wanted you to fear me." "Who would do that?" my mom asked, genuinely confused. Danielle shrugged. "Maybe someone jealous, maybe a coworker, maybe an ex." That last one made my heart skip. An ex. My mind went to one person I had tried very, very hard to forget. But no, he wouldn't. He couldn't. Could he? I pushed the thought away. It doesn't matter who wrote this, my father said. What matters is that we need to figure out how to handle this. I stared at him. You don't need to handle anything. This is my problem, my life. We're your family, my mother insisted. We should be helping. Funny, I replied. You weren't my family when I graduated. You weren't my family when I moved to New York alone. You weren't my family when I struggled. But now that I'm successful, now it suddenly matters? My father slammed his hand on the table, causing the silverware to jump. Stop acting like we owe you something. And that was it. The moment I realized the truth. My father didn't want to protect me. He didn't want to understand me. He didn't even want to reconnect. He wanted access. Access to my life, my world, my success. The same success he once mocked me for pursuing. And perhaps something more. Maybe something connected to the lie in that email. Danielle broke the silence first. Lauren, there's something else we haven't told you. My stomach tightened. What now? She glanced at our parents nervously, then at me. That email, it wasn't the first message we got about you. My heart stopped. What? My father exhaled heavily, rubbing his temples. We've received messages for months. 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 And you didn't think to tell me? I whispered. My mother's lips trembled. We didn't want to overwhelm you. Overwhelm me? My voice cracked. Someone is impersonating me, sabotaging me, stalking my life, and you didn't tell me because you didn't want to overwhelm me? My father looked me dead in the eyes. No, we didn't tell you because we weren't sure if they were lying. The words sliced straight through me. Danielle leaned forward again, lowering her voice. And there's something else, Lauren. Something big. Her eyes flicked toward the envelope containing the Penthouse deed. That email, whoever sent those messages, somehow knew about the Penthouse before we did. That took the breath right out of my lungs. Someone had known. Someone had been watching me. Someone had been closer than I realized. And, she continued quietly, they didn't just send emails. I stared at her. What do you mean? Danielle swallowed hard. They sent photos. My heart dropped. Photos of what? Of you, in New York. Coming out of your building, walking with people, entering offices. The world tilted sideways. Someone had been following me, photographing me, tracking me. My father looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since childhood. Fear mixed with anger. Lauren, this isn't just jealousy or family drama, he said. This is organized. My throat tightened. You think someone is stalking me? No, my mother whispered. We think someone wants to ruin you. And Danielle said the words that changed everything. And we think you know exactly who it is. I don't know how long we all sat there after Danielle said those words. Maybe a few seconds, maybe a full minute. Time became strangely thick, stretching like warm taffy, sticky and slow and impossible to swallow. The restaurant around us kept humming, cutlery chiming, waiters weaving between tables, people laughing like nothing in the world was wrong. But at our table, everything felt suspended. I kept staring at Danielle, as if blinking might break whatever spell her confession had cast. You think I know who it is? I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. Yes. Something inside me recoiled. Fear or anger? I couldn't tell. Maybe both. My father crossed his arms, eyes sharpening. Lauren, if you know who's been watching you, we need to involve the authorities immediately. The authorities. I almost laughed. My father had never been one to call the police unless something directly threatened him. But now, suddenly, this was an emergency. I took a slow breath, trying to steady the trembling in my hands. I don't know, I said quietly. I have suspicions, but I don't know. My mother leaned forward, her voice gentle in a way she rarely used with me. Tell us, please. I looked at her, really looked at her. The soft wrinkles around her eyes, the slightly trembling lip, the fear mixed with something else. Regret? Maybe. Or guilt finally seeping through the cracks. I wasn't sure. I don't want to accuse anyone without proof, I replied. My father scoffed. That's ridiculous. Someone's been stalking you, Lauren. This is serious. I clenched my jaw. I know it's serious. I've been living the life they've been watching, remember? He blinked, startled, as if he hadn't expected a reply that sharp. Danielle exhaled, rubbing her forehead. Look, we're not trying to attack you. We're confused and scared. This whole thing is bigger than we thought. I glanced down at the tablecloth, tracing the embroidered pattern with my fingertip. A slow ache began expanding in my chest, an ache that had been there for years, but quieter then. Can you show me the photos? I asked softly. All three of them exchanged a look. That alone told me everything. There was more, much more. My father reached into his pocket again, pulled up a folder on his phone, and slid it toward me. I hesitated before picking it up. My reflection stared back at me, wide eyes, tense jaw, fear swirling behind my pupils. Then I opened the folder, and everything inside me sank. The first photo was taken from across the street, zoomed in. I was exiting my building, wearing my navy coat, holding a coffee cup in one hand, tote bag over my shoulder. I remembered that day clearly, because I'd forgotten to set my alarm and rushed to a meeting. The second photo was of me leaving my office. The angle suggested the photographer was hiding in a car or behind one. The third was me sitting in a cafe with my coworker, Jenna, laughing at something she'd said. More followed. Some blurry, some too clear. All invasive. All wrong. My stomach twisted painfully. These were taken months ago, I whispered. You've been getting these for months? My father nodded slowly. At first, it was 1 or 2. Then it escalated. Why didn't you tell me? I asked again, but this time my voice cracked. My mother swallowed hard. Because the messages always came with instructions not to contact you. My head jerked up. What? Danielle nodded grimly. They said if we reached out, it would make things worse. My pulse slammed against my ribs. Make what worse? Everything, my mother whispered. They said you were in danger, that people were watching you, that if we reached out, it would put you at risk. I stared at her, stunned into silence. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe any of this was happening at all. We thought we were protecting you, she added. I let out a shaky breath. Protecting me by cutting me out of my own family? Danielle flinched. We thought you were distancing yourself for a reason. I distanced myself because you made it clear I wasn't wanted. I shot back. My father's jaw tightened. We didn't make anything clear. You left. Because you never saw me, I whispered. Not really. The words hung between us, heavy and trembling. My mother looked down at her hands. Danielle stared at the wall. My father frowned like he wanted to argue but didn't know how to start. Finally, my mom spoke. Lauren, whoever did this knows things, personal things. Like what? My father exhaled. Your schedule, your building, your coworkers' names, the fact that you recently got promoted to partner. My breath caught. How did they know about the partnership? Danielle hesitated. We don't know, but the first message mentioning it came before you told us. My heart went cold. That wasn't coincidence. That wasn't an ex. That wasn't a jealous coworker. That was someone with access. Someone who was either incredibly close to me or incredibly close to my personal information. There's something else, my father muttered. I braced myself. The messages, he pressed his lips together. They weren't just warnings. Some of them were opinions about you. Opinions? Judgments, Danielle clarified. They said things like, she's always been manipulative. She's capable of anything. She lies easily. Every sentence hit me like a slap. My chest tightened with a familiar, ugly feeling. A feeling I'd carried since childhood. Being misunderstood. Being misjudged. Being the afterthought. Someone wanted us to see the worst in you, my mother whispered, her voice trembling. Someone who knew your insecurities, your history with us, everything. I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw. I don't know who it is, I whispered. I swear I don't. Danielle watched me carefully. But do you have an idea? I hesitated. Images flickered through my mind. A face. A name. A memory I had tried to bury. But it didn't feel right to bring it up. Not yet. Not when I wasn't fully sure. Not when panic was fogging my thoughts. I need time to think, I finally said. Danielle nodded, surprisingly gentle. Okay. My father, however, wasn't done. Lauren, there's more you need to know. I shot him a wary look. What now? He let out a slow, heavy sigh. We didn't ignore your graduation out of cruelty. I felt my stomach clench. I had spent years believing that, years resenting it, years letting that moment define the wall between me and my family. Then why? I whispered. My mother exchanged a look with my father, a long, silent conversation passing between them. Finally, she took a breath. Because the same person sent us a message the night before your graduation. My heart stopped. What? She nodded. They said, if we attended, something bad would happen. I felt nauseous. Something bad like what? We don't know, Danielle said quietly. The message was vague, but threatening enough to scare them. My father clenched his teeth. It said your graduation was a setup, that someone planned to embarrass you publicly, that we should stay away for your safety. My mind raced. Why didn't you tell me? He gave me a helpless look. You were so excited. We didn't want to ruin it. I pushed back from the table, stunned, overwhelmed, betrayed in ways I didn't even know were possible. All these years, I had thought they didn't come because they didn't care, because I wasn't important enough, because Danielle's volleyball tournament was more worthy of their attention. But now, sitting here, realizing someone had been manipulating my family for nearly a decade, it hit me like a tidal wave. You all let me believe it was my fault? I whispered. That I did something wrong? My mother's eyes finally filled with tears. We thought we were doing the right thing. Then why didn't you tell me after? I demanded. Why didn't you explain? Danielle's voice was small. Because the messages kept coming, always changing, always twisting things. Eventually, it made more sense to just move on. Move on. Move on. From my pain, my humiliation, my confusion. Just like that? As if my feelings were a page they could simply turn. I pressed my hand to my forehead, trying to breathe. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected, not just from the stalker, whoever they were, but from my own family. My whole life I had felt unseen, overlooked, unchosen. And now it turned out I had been actively erased. Not because they hated me, but because someone else wanted them to. Someone who was obsessed enough to orchestrate it. Someone who invested years into isolating me. Someone who enjoyed watching me break. My voice shook as I asked, do you still have the old messages? My father nodded. All of them. I need to see everything, I said firmly. All the emails, all the photos, all the warnings. We'll show you, my mother whispered. Just please stay calm. I let out a slow, shaky breath. Calm wasn't even an option anymore. My life, my entire adult life, had been shaped by someone else's lies. I picked up the phone again, scrolling through the photos. Each one made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to look. And then I stopped. One photo stood out. It wasn't like the others. The angle was different, lower, almost ground level. It had been taken from inside a car, through a cracked window. I was looking down at my phone, waiting at a crosswalk, and reflected faintly in the glass door behind me was part of a face, a cheek, a jawline, a glimpse of a familiar scar I hadn't seen in years. My heart slammed against my ribs. No, it couldn't be. Lauren? Danielle asked softly. What is it? I stared at the photo, the world around me falling away. My hands trembled violently. My breathing hitched. Because the partial face reflected in the glass, the scar, the shape of the jaw, the faint outline of the watch I once bought as a birthday gift, it all pointed to one horrifying possibility. One person I had hoped never to see again. One person who had once promised, if you walk away from me, you'll regret it. I swallowed, my voice barely audible. I think I know who's been following me. My family stared at me, their expressions twisting in confusion and fear. My hands shook harder as I placed the phone on the table. It's someone from my past. Danielle leaned forward. Who? I lifted my eyes, my voice cracking. Someone I never thought I'd have to face again. And then the restaurant lights flickered. Not enough to be alarming, but enough to make my stomach twist. Enough to remind me of a night long ago. Enough to confirm the possibility I had feared for years. My pulse thundered as the truth settled inside me like ice. Whoever had been watching me wasn't just obsessed. They were close. Much closer than I realized. Close enough to follow me. Close enough to manipulate my family. Close enough to know my every move. I took a shaky breath. He's here, I whispered.
I woke up the next morning with that strange, quiet heaviness I only get after a night full of crying, but also full of clarity. It's like waking up in a new skin, fragile, stretched, but undeniably mine. There in my penthouse overlooking Manhattan, and a space I built for myself when no one else believed in me, I realized something. The ache in my chest wasn't just from last night's confrontation, it was from 32 years of emotional scarcity. 32 years of begging for scraps of affection, for tiny crumbs of acknowledgement, for someone in my family to simply say, "Lauren, you matter to us." I sat up slowly, the morning light spilling across my sheets like a silent witness, and for the first time in my life, I felt the subtle truth that had been trying to reach me all along. Maybe I had been waiting for something they didn't have the capacity to give. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of tea. My hands were still trembling slightly, not just from the confrontation, but from the release that followed. I replayed everything that happened, the shouting, the accusations, the truth finally clawing its way out of my throat, their faces as I spoke, the tension, the shock, the denial they tried to hide. But the biggest moment was the silence afterwards, that deep, ringing silence that only happens when people have been caught, when they realize someone they underestimated isn't weak anymore. I sat at the dining table, staring out at the skyline, and let myself feel every emotion without fighting it this time. The hurt, the anger, the disappointment, but also the relief. Because even though last night was painful, it was also the first time I had stood up fully for myself, without fear of losing them. And that meant something. That meant I had finally grown. Later that afternoon, I got a text from my mother. Just one line. "We need to talk, please." I stared at the screen for a long minute, feeling a familiar pressure rise in my chest. The old me, the girl who cried herself to sleep after being ignored at her own graduation, would have rushed to reply. She would have arranged a meeting immediately, terrified to upset her mother, desperate to fix things no matter the cost to her own peace. But the woman I was becoming, she wasn't in a hurry anymore. She wasn't scrambling for their approval. I put my phone down and let her message sit there, unanswered, floating on my screen like a decision I didn't have to make right away. By evening, I finally texted back. Saturday, noon. Here. Short, clear, boundaried. When Saturday came, I felt strangely calm as I prepared the living room. I didn't dress up, didn't try to impress anyone. I wore simple jeans, a soft sweater, and tied my hair in a loose knot. The penthouse felt different today. Not like a stage I had to perform on, but a safe room that belonged to me. At exactly noon, the elevator chimed and my mother stepped in. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in presence. As if the confrontation had peeled back the polished layers she always wore, revealing someone who wasn't as confident as she pretended to be. She glanced around the penthouse with a nervous tension I could practically feel, and for a moment, I saw her not as my mother, but as a woman with her own fears, regrets, and insecurities. Someone who had made mistakes not always out of cruelty, but out of her own brokenness. "Lauren," she said softly, her voice almost unsure. "Thank you for seeing me." I nodded. "Let's sit." We took our seats across from each other, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a child speaking to her mother. I felt like two adults facing the truth. She took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology," she began, her eyes glistening already. "For the way I treated you. For all the years I didn't listen. For last night. For..." Everything. I didn't say anything. I just listened. She wrung her hands, her voice trembling slightly. I know I failed you, and it's not because you were unimportant. It's because you reminded me of myself. I blinked. That was not what I expected. She continued, voice cracking as she forced the words out. You were quiet, sensitive, independent. You didn't ask for much. And I laughed sadly. I thought that meant you didn't need much. I thought Danielle needed me more. She was louder, more demanding. She'd fall apart if I wasn't there. But you, God, Lauren, you were so strong even as a child. I didn't realize your strength was just survival. I didn't see what you hid. I felt my throat tighten. Hearing her say that brought up so many memories. My little self sitting alone with coloring books, my teenage self crying quietly after being overlooked again, my adult self pretending it didn't hurt. She looked down. I'm not asking you to forget everything. I don't deserve that. But I'm asking, can we start again? Can I get to know you for real this time? The old ache flared inside me, but it wasn't sharp anymore. It felt like a bruise, still there, still tender, but healing. I took a breath. I can forgive you, I said slowly. I want peace. I want something healthy, but I won't go back to the way things were. Her eyes lifted with a mixture of sorrow and acceptance. I understand. There will be boundaries, I continued. I won't tolerate being dismissed or compared anymore, and I won't chase anyone for attention, not even you. She nodded again, more firmly this time. Then I'll follow them, whatever you need. We talked for nearly 2 hours about the past, about the patterns, about her fears, about mine. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a miracle fix, but it was honest, and honesty felt like oxygen after years of suffocating silence.